How can you ensure protection? Well, maybe more along this lines. Maybe you are protected in your organization, but how do you know that your vendor, your outsourcing company, how do you know if they're monitoring HIPAA compliance? Well, let me tell you, there is 4 things that we have found that will help you button up and ensure better HIPAA compliance with your vendors. These 4 things were helped orchestrated by Matt's company, and so we're very much appreciative of the HIPAAtraining.com organization, Digital Compliance, that has helped us put these 4 things together. So here they are. The first one is a signed business associate agreement. A signed business associate agreement. You got to have it. Number 2, a HIPAA readiness checklist. What do you do to police yourself internally? Number 3, HIPAA certificates and confidentiality agreements. And then number 4, policies and procedures. So let's go through each one quickly. A BAA versus terms and agreements. So there is a difference. A business associate agreement should be offered by you, the provider, to your vendors. That is what the law says, is that you should be giving it to the vendor and saying, here's our business associate agreement. Terms and conditions are just the terms and conditions of the agreement with your vendor. And so with BBC Global Services, we ensure protection with the healthcare clinic by making sure we sign a BAA with you. So we have it, we provide one for you if you don't have one already, and we'll sign yours, that's no big deal. But we make sure that you sign a business associate agreement and terms and conditions when you do business with us. Anything specific about business associates agreements that are so important, Matt?
I'm just going to reiterate what you said, and that is, it's an ideal that as a covered entity, I am providing the business associate agreement to my business associate, and that's some vendor downstream from me. It's not a legal requirement. I mean, if in fact you don't provide and you just begin doing business, and you would say, I would never do that, of course, because you're familiar with HIPAA standards, but fully 60, 70% of our organizations don't understand this premise. And so here's what happens. There's nothing fundamentally wrong with receiving a totally reliable and healthy contract from a business associate that they ask you to sign. But the reason they're doing that is because the relationship has not been covered by the protections offered in the contract. Now, when I don't offer it and I quickly sign one that comes from my business associate, and I'm going to repeat this, that's not fundamentally a problem, especially if you have a trusting relationship. But I have lost control of the contractual language. And remember that the purpose of the policies and procedures are not just to protect the PHI, but it's also to protect the organization. And so the recommendation suggests that all contracts and all handshakes start upstream and head downstream. Other than that, you nailed it. Great job.
Fantastic. So a HIPAA assessment, readiness assessment. I'm sorry, guys, I wanted to be able to cut this up and pop up a bunch of different these questions so that you could see them. So I know that this is small, but let me just take a second and walk through this with you. This is our readiness checklist, and this is something that we police ourselves with in the organization. So number 1 is that business associate agreement. That's the first thing on this checklist, and we make a determination if we need one, if there's going to be private health information that's transacted with our organization. That is a medical virtual assistant. Number 2, workforce training, making sure that we do all of the trainings necessary within our organization and we have them on file. Internal systems, policies, and procedures. Are we ready with your internal systems, policies, and procedures on a regular basis? Subcontractor and contract agreements, unauthorized disclosures, accounting for private health information. How do we do that within our organization? Do we need to do that within our organization specific to the account? And we look at this to make sure that we're ready. We also look at the availability of records. If for whatever reason, God forbid, we needed to provide it to Health and Human Services, we have that information readily available on how we did and what we did. Unauthorized disclosure of PHI, breach of insecure PHI. So do you have a readiness checklist? Does your vendor have a readiness checklist? That's a good question to make sure that you are protecting private health information with your vendor. Next thing here, the HIPAA certificates and confidentiality agreements. We can provide, as soon as your specific virtual assistant gets done with their HIPAA training, as we onboard them, we provide you with a copy of that HIPAA certificate and their confidentiality agreement. We have those on file for you. So that's another way to ensure HIPAA compliance with your vendors. And then lastly, Matt's organization has been so kind to take the time to help us develop over 30 different policies and procedures specific to HIPAA, working with private health information. And like those 10 there are samples that you see on the screen right there, accounting for private health information, what to do in the event of data breach, computer system. Can your vendors talk to you about their policies and procedures within their organization as it relates to HIPAA? Anything around those four things that they need to know, Matt, that I did not cover?
No, and you hinted at a really important detail. So the only thing I'm going to say about that is if you're not able to have a basic conversation about, hey, we're interested in doing business with you. How do you guys account for PHI disclosures? If there's a stutter or a pause, or they want to redirect you, it might be because they're sales. And you get into a conversation with the person who identifies themselves as a compliance officer, and they can't have a basic conversation with you about their policies and procedures, about the actions they would take. That's a red flag. And so you do a little homework. The fundamental rule to protect yourself in HIPAA compliance is the phrase due diligence. I did everything that I could reasonably do, and it shouldn't be intrusive on your day-to-day operations. I did everything I could reasonably do to identify that they did in fact have policies and procedures in place, and that they did in fact follow their own policies and procedures. And then that is the golden approach. Even in an audit, you, where the assumption would be there's an audit, I'm in trouble. And that is not the case. As many auditors walk away with no recommended action other than internal administrative changes as there are those that come away with financial penalties. You truly can prepare for an audit, and there's nothing to fear as long as we're following due diligence.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you very much.